taking a digital photo is something most of us do every day without really giving it much thought. In fact, most of us walk around with a very high resolution and great quality digital camera in our pocket all day long. And viewing photos on your TV is usually as simple as casting it from your phone or inserting a USB stick full of JPEGs. But rewind to the early 90s, and getting your holiday snaps onto a digital format to view on a screen was a slightly trickier affair. Now, of course, this was around the time of the first wave of living room multimedia set-top boxes, that market that everyone assumed was going to be the next big wave in technology, but never actually materialized. While companies like Philips and Commodore were fighting it out with their CDI and CD-TV systems, photo giant Kodak decided to add yet another sleek black box to our ever-expanding home theatre systems. Enter Kodak Photo CD. Not to be confused with the later picture CD format that came along in the late 90s, Photo CD was the first attempt at a mass-market standard for everyday people as well as professional photographers to digitize and view their photos on a compact disc format on their living room television. Announced in 1990 and released onto the market in 1992, the Photo CD system would mean that customers could take their usual camera rolls or negatives into a high street photo shop, and instead of having them developed onto paper, they would use a Sun computer, a Kodak high-resolution scanner, and a CD writer to burn the images onto compact disc that you could then view on a suitable player at home. Early digital cameras like the Kodak DCS200 were also on the market by now, using a built-in hard disk for image recording, and of course, you could get these images developed onto a photo CD as well. Now, I've got a standalone photo CD unit, the Kodak PCD865, and this is quite a bulky unit, around the same size, if not a little bit bigger, than the average VCR that you would have had in your living room around this time. And the build quality is actually pretty good, quite similar to a premium video recorder that you would have got back in the early 90s, with a metal top part of the case, and on the front we've got a selection of controls for viewing photo CDs and controlling audio discs, as this player can actually play both. And we also have a 6.3mm jack for connecting headphones. There's a nice big display for track information right in the centre, and a very chunky CD tray for inserting your discs. We've got the Kodak logo and the usual brags on the front telling us about bitstream conversion, 3-position photo zooms, and 8K of programmable memory, and the fact that it can automatically play pictures. And it's pretty basic on the back as well, with various outputs including RF, S-video, composite, SCART, and it's even got an antenna pass-through as well, so that means you can obviously still receive over-the-air analog TV channels while your television's connected to the photo CD player. The power supply is internal, so we've got a standard 2-pin connector. And I've got the manual with it as well, which is pretty basic, really just telling you how to set the player up. But really, it's as simple as hooking up power and AV leads. Not much more to it. We also get a basic remote control included and a demonstration CD as well. Now, I've got my unit hooked up via SCART to a Philips RGB CRT monitor, and here you can see the layout of a typical photo CD. And it could have some pretty interesting features, including on-screen graphics and menus to browse your photos on the disc. And interestingly, it's also got some basic multimedia features, including playing audio alongside images.
Welcome to the exciting new world of Kodak Photo CD.
And the speed in which it loads pictures is actually pretty decent, considering how long it would have taken a typical PC back in 1992 to display a full-screen JPEG, for example. And on screen, they actually look really sharp. Now, to get the images scanned in, they used a really high DPI scanner, and they were saved with a maximum resolution of 2048 by 3072 pixels with 24-bit color, which was very good for the time. And there are also lower resolution versions of the same image contained within the files. And this was quite clever because it meant the system doesn't have to decode and scale for lower resolution environments. And there was a Pro variant of Photo CD that came along shortly after, which could hold images up to 6144 by 4096 pixels. And the discs themselves are actually quite interesting. Photo CD was a proprietary format owned by Kodak, and it used multi-session recordable CDs, and they could hold around 100 images per disc. The idea being that you could bring the same disc back to the photo shop and get more images added onto it if it wasn't full, to save you buying a new one each time. Now, I can't actually find any UK pricing information online, but it turns out in America, the discs retail for around $10. And I've got a feeling from memory, they actually were around £10 here in the UK, with each picture being around 25 pence to be burnt onto it. Which might sound like a lot today, but bearing in mind that most people, at most, probably had a black and white hand scanner back then, this was very reasonable for the time. But the players were considerably more, and this was really the stumbling block for most home users. Starting at around $400 for the most basic model, and much more for systems with things like multi-disc changes. But having a dedicated photo CD player wasn't the only way to view the images on these discs. Sensibly, Kodak did allow photo CDs to be viewed on other systems, including the Philips CDI, which could play photo CDs out of the box without any extra software needed. And this does make sense because a lot of the photo CD players were actually manufactured by Philips in the same plants that they made their CDI units in at the time. You could also view photo CDs on your computer if you had a capable machine with a multi-session CD-ROM drive and appropriate software. And pictures on photo CDs are stored in a raster image file format called, quite logically, PCD files. And there existed viewers for standard PCs, SGI systems, Sun workstations, OS2. Many systems had third-party software made as well, like this viewer and converter for the Amiga. I'm actually looking at photo CD files on a CD32 console here. And later on, macOS actually had photo CD support built in. And here I am viewing them on OS 9 on a Power Mac G4. Just put the disc in and you can check out the images. And today, free programs like FanView can convert them to a more standard format like JPEG. And Kodak actually used to license and create plugins for many popular image software suites like CorelDRAW, Quark Express, and Photoshop could actually support Photo CD's PCD format for many years, though it did drop it with the release of CS3. But what about today? Now, obviously, there is no need for Photo CD in 2020, now that we've all got smartphones and smart TVs and every device in your house is cloud connected. But I thought for fun, why don't we try putting an image on a Photo CD? And it turns out that information on making your own photo CDs is surprisingly scarce online these days. And the best, and to be honest, the only resource I could find, was Ted Felix's very comprehensive unofficial photo CD homepage, which I did find very useful when making this video. Now, the site itself dates back to the days when photo CD was still relevant, but he has updated it with some more information over the years. The last update was actually back in 2009, but to be fair, there hasn't really been a lot new in the world of photo CD in the last decade. So after much experimentation, I finally cracked it. Now, there may be better ways of doing it, but this is the process that worked for me. So first, I took a photo on my iPhone, transferred that to my PC and resized it so that it's the correct size for a photo CD, and then used the trial version of a program called Graphics Workshop, which is a still in development modern program for Windows 10, which can export files in PCD format. And next, I'm going to use Kodak's official Build It software. Now, this dates from 1996. By then, CD writers were starting to come onto the market, but really, this was aimed at shops and professionals who ran Windows or Mac machines. And it turns out from reading, apparently the software is pretty hard to find, but I managed to get hold of it from the Macintosh Garden website. And the image file that you download on there contains both Windows and the Mac versions. Now, unfortunately, this isn't compatible with my 64-bit version of Windows 10, so I burnt the image onto a CD and transferred my PCD images across my network onto a Windows 98 machine. And if you haven't got one of those lying around on your network, you can probably do this in a virtual machine as well. Next, we'll make a CD image containing that photo, and we'll need to do one extra step to be able to write it onto a standard CDR. Now, back then, Kodak were pretty closed with their photo CD format, and even though they work in standard CD-ROM drives, they wanted you to buy their special $10 a disc photo CD blanks off them, not write it onto a standard CDR disc. But luckily, there is a workaround. This little program called PMFT2Q, which again, unfortunately, is a few years old and won't work on Windows 10, so I'm going to be using Windows 98 for this as well. Now this will take the disk image designed for Kodak discs that their Build It software spits out and convert it to a standard .q file that can then be written to a CDR using a writing program such as ImageBurn. And after all that, all being well, we should be able to insert this standard CDR into the Photo CD player and view the image. And there we go, a photo taken on my iPhone in 2020, displayed on glorious early 90s technology. So is there any reason why you might want to use Kodak Photo CD today? Well, I'll be honest, there is absolutely none whatsoever. Now, there are lots of retro systems and technology that I think still have valid uses in 2020, but I really can't see any reason that you'd want to use Photo CD today unless you're a mega nerd like me and you find it a bit of a curiosity. But there's no denying that it was definitely impressive technology for the time. So that's been a look at Kodak Photo CD. If you've got any memories of it you'd like to share, please leave a comment. And check out my weekly retro gaming podcast. Now, this week on the Retro Hour podcast, we're joined by Guru Larry Bundy, talking about obscure video game facts on this week's show. And you can get it from Spotify, Apple or Google Podcasts, or visit our website at theretrohour.com. And while you're here on YouTube, you might want to check out a few more of my videos and maybe consider supporting my channel on Patreon if you'd like to see more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.